Now let's talk about structuring your business. If you're serious about this course label model and building a business with this concept and with this strategy, I recommend that you start an entirely new business. You can certainly add the income stream to another business because you'll have a different source of revenue from a second business, but I really recommend you start a completely new business or company, and there are reasons and benefits for that, and I'm going to talk about those. So ideally, you'll want to set up a new corporation for this specific course label business. Now, I'm obviously not an attorney nor an accountant, so I'm not giving any kind of legal advice, but I do think it's in your best interest to set up a new corporation or LLC or whatever the equivalent is for your area, your country, for setting up a business. The reason why you'll want to do that is when you do deals and you collect sales and you do all kinds of sorts of things, using this model, you're going to want to have them structured and flowing through that one company. If you add online course, especially course label deals, to an existing business, it can create some problems with mixing your payment revenue from other, products you may already sell if you sell e-commerce products or coaching or you do other things. So it can be a little confusing. It can make it harder to track certain deals, but it's also not as clean from a marketing standpoint and from an image and branding standpoint. I'm going to get into that and explain that. So you'll ideally want to set up a separate corporation. I recommend you use a name that includes something like publishing, media, or training. So if you're like Acme Publishing, Acme Media, Acme Training, or whatever your last name, Reese Publishing, Reese Media, Reese Training, something like that, because especially publishing and media, that has a lot to do with just publishing companies in general. It's kind of like the model that record labels kind of created when it's something records or something like that. Or some of the movie studios, they all kind of follow the kind of same naming schemes for whatever studios or something films. It's the same thing with any kind of publishing, and it works very well for a course label business that your main company, this corporation, is called like something related to the business model. Like you're basically an online course publisher, so it would be nice if your business name was something publishing, or even using like media, which is kind of the modern term for publishing in different formats. And you can also use training, because that relates to online courses and education. And of course, you can use any kind of name you want if you don't want to use one of those. But I recommend that you kind of use one of those because when you do approach people to do deals, it's just more professional. Imagine if you say, "Hi, I'm from, Elite Publishing, and we publish online courses, and we wanted to see about hiring an expert to do some dog training videos. We found your stuff online, and you really look like you know what you're doing, and we'd like to see about working something out with you to pay you to create some content." So you coming at it like that, by saying that you're this publishing company or this media company, I think it just gives you a leg up and it makes you more professional, and in most cases it will make it more likely to do a deal. You need to try and find an available .com domain for your main company name. Don't get into these .ios and .us's and .nets and .cc's and .biz. .com is king. It probably always will be on the internet. I don't recommend you do business with anything but a .com. By having a .com, it just makes you look that much more professional, that you're not using some kind of alternate name. Yes, there are companies that have used alternate extensions and had success, but usually you're better off if you go with .com. And I'm going to show you a tool in this week's module of lessons called NameStation, which I like for finding available domains. I'm going to talk to you about that because you'll also want to have good domains for your online course products themselves. And I'm going to get into all that as well as your different brands. But try and find an available .com domain for your main company. So if you're like, I'll stick with the same example. If you're like Elite Publishing, then you'd want to have like elitepublishing.com, which, so before you go and form a corporation or before you go and form a name, see if you get the domain first. That's where I always start. I'm like, is the domain available or can it be bought for a reasonable price? Because you'll find that, someone may have the name you want or it's a domain broker, but at least it's for sale. By the way, just throwing this out there real quick, there's a company called Huge Domains, Huge domains.com. They're a big domain reseller, and they have a lot of different domains that they have that are for sale. And the great thing, and they range from about $1,000 to $2,000 or $3,000 for most. If you don't have the budget for it, that's one thing. Then you don't want this option. But usually they have some really good names. And what they have recently started doing, which is so smart on their part for selling domains, is they do payment plans. So if they have a domain that's $2,000, they'll do it for 12 payments, and there's no additional finance fee. They'll just break up the $2,000 to payments, so whatever that is, $180 a month or something. And what's great is, if you ever want to cancel the deal, you could stop paying the payments and they'll just take the domain back. So you're not promising to, that you have to pay the full amount. Why this is important is, let's say you're going to start an online course and you find they have a domain for sale that would be perfect for your online course or for that brand, but you don't yet know how well it's going to do because you haven't started selling the course. You could do a deal with them, set up a payment plan to buy a domain, maybe it's $150 a month, and then launch it and get going and see if it sells. And if it's not selling, you're not getting good traction with that product and you want to move on to something else, well, cancel your domain deal so you don't have to make any other payments. And maybe it only costs you 1 or 2 months worth of payments to have a really good domain name to at least make an effort in trying to build that business. So that's an option as well. You'll want a professional logo and nice company website design created. Your main publishing company kind of hub. And by the way, you don't always have to list like every product that you sell. In fact, you probably shouldn't do that because it just lets competitors see all the different online course markets that you're in. And so you can just put some basic information about your company and just, talk about how you're building training information. And maybe you could mention a few things, or you could keep it vague, like talk about like you produce content for different corporate markets, hobbies, sports, those types of things. It can be a very simple, like one-page website, maybe with an about page, contact information, things like that. You're going to want to have a front-facing website for your course label business or corporation, because as you do deals, like people are going to go look up the website and you want it to look slick. You want it to look professional, have a nice logo, have some really sharp design. And it's not that expensive to create a nice website design. In fact, you can use companies like Lead Pages or other page creators, use some of their templates with stock photos and things, just add your logo to it that maybe you'll have someone create. And you can have a very, very basic but very professional looking just a couple of page website that you can use for your main kind of media company or publishing company. You'll do all your course label deal agreements, obviously, with this main company. So it's nice to have a professional appearing company name and presence, because that's who's going to be on the other end of the deal when you're hiring work for hire talent or doing any of those other deal types. You'll start by collecting payments as well for all your courses with this company name. So keeping it generic, like something publishing, something media, customers, you'll be telling them, hey, on your statement, it'll say Elite Publishing or whatever, that their statement will read. But you'll start by collecting payments for all your courses, with that company name. So give that some thought too, that's going to show up like on the credit card statements or PayPal receipts. Now, when you have one of your training brands, I'm going to explain a little bit more what a training brand is. Essentially, it's just when you go into a market, you're going to create like a brand. That could be one course, and that could be the name of the course, or it could be kind of a main name that'll end up encompassing multiple courses. But when you have one of these training brands, in other words, one of these markets take off and it starts producing a lot of sales, then you can consider creating a spin-off company just for that training brand. And coming up in the lessons, I talk about naming courses and naming these training brands. And I use the example of tactical tennis because I talk about alliteration, if possibly using names that start with the same letter. And I'll get into all that. But tactical tennis, so let's say that's a brand that you start and you start doing very, very well selling online courses with that brand, Tactical Tennis. Well, you may then want to go and actually create Tactical Tennis Inc. or Tactical Tennis LLC, get its own PayPal account, its own payment accounts, and create its own bank accounts. And really, that's its own business. So Tactical Tennis, if you were then doing deals with, other content creators, other tennis experts, then you'd have agreements and they'd be signing deals directly with Tactical Tennis as that brand. By the way, that may be somebody's company. I haven't looked, so only using that as an example. It may already exist. But you'll be doing deals then with that Tactical Tennis company and brand with more talent to build out the products, whether it's more courses, a membership site, software, whatever you expand into through that training brand, it's that company. And so when you have a project that starts doing very well and making a lot of money, it may be in your best interest to spin it off and start a new company. I'm not sure how it works in other countries, but I know in the United States, for example, you could have a corporation like an LLC, a limited liability company, and you could create other LLCs that are essentially owned by the parent company. So you could have Elite Publishing, and then you could have Tactical Tennis, and then you could have Cajun Cooking or whatever. And those other two could be separate LLCs that you create. So they're collecting their own payments. They have their own bank accounts. You can do deals with them. But they're owned by Elite Publishing, and they all fall kind of as divisions under Elite Publishing. And so that may be something for you to consider. Again, I'm not sure about other countries. I only know the U.S. because I'm a U.S. resident and do business in the U.S. But for us in the United States, it costs about $300, give or take, to set up an LLC. And so I recommend Incorporate.com. That's who I use, and they've been very, very good. They're called the Company Corporation. They've been around for years and years, and they can help you to create a corporation. I typically create my corporations in the state of Delaware because Delaware is a very corporate-friendly state, and you don't have a lot of other fees that other states do. But you can look into that yourself and do your own state if you want, if you live in a certain state. Anyways, but you can easily set up multiple LLCs for, again, about $300 each, and then depending on what state you do business in, you have to register it with the state. It may cost you another couple $100. But for less than $1,000, you can set up an entirely new company and bank accounts and everything else. And it may be worth doing if one of your courses and one of your niches really takes off, starts making 10 grand a month or whatever else, might be worth setting up a new company or a new division of an umbrella company to structure it that way. And you can eventually branch off and do the course label deals, like I mentioned, with the training brand companies themselves. So if you create that Tactical Tennis LLC, you could technically then start doing deals with that corporation related to that business and no longer with Elite Publishing. But those are just some structural ideas for you to start think about how to manage this business and how to move forward. Basically, you want to start with a general company that's going to do all the deals and actually going to collect payments for all the products. But when you find certain products that really start to take off and show a lot of promise, you may want to consider spinning those off and then having their own separate, not only corporate stuff, but as bank accounts as well.